Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
I'm Sharaad, Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The tabling of several amended provisions of the Federal Constitution relating to the Malaysia Agreement 1963 has been delayed indefinitely. According to the MA63 bill was initially scheduled to be tabled in Dewan Rakyat yesterday, to be followed by a second reading on Thursday. But according to the de facto law minister, the tabling of the bill was delayed because a consensus could not be reached on some of the proposed amendments. Now, back in April of 2019, the then-Pakatan Harapan administration had failed to get its MA63 constitutional amendments passed. So will this postponement be yet another setback in efforts to address the perception that the Federation has deviated from the agreement that led to the formation of Malaysia in 1963? Let's ask James Chin. He's a professor of Asian Studies at University of Tasmania, Australia. He joins us now. James, what do you understand to be the cause of contention with these amendments? I mean, it seems that some of the ministers have asked for further clarification on the amendments. What do you think is behind the hold-up?
So to understand the hold-up, you need to understand that unlike 2019, this time they're asking for 3 amendments. Out of the 3 amendments, I suspect only one is controversial. So let me go through quickly the 3 amendments. The first one is the one that is similar to 2019, and that is simply Article 1, Subsection 2, that will take up Sabah and Sharaad from the list of all the states in Malaysia and simply stick it to a separate line. The second one is Article 160, Subsection 2. That one defines the Federation of Malaysia before 63 as the Federation of Malaya, after 63 as the Federation of Malaysia Act, and that includes a statement about Singapore leaving the Federation. And the final amendment is Article 161, and that basically says that a native of Sarawak is whoever is listed as a native in the Sarawak State Constitution. So basically, it's the middle one that is highly controversial. The first one is not controversial, it's largely symbolic. The third one is basically saying that it's up to the Sarawak government and the Sarawak Constitution to define who is a native. It is the middle one that is causing a lot of issues because I think there is a large part of the Malayan political establishment who are worried about the complicated wordings, and they're worried that there may be implications because of the wordings referring to the Malaysia Agreement that will lead to legal problems in the future.
James, it seems like a clarification might be a code for precisely this kind of lack of consensus. And perhaps you could help us understand what possible implications are there arising from this amendment, especially when it relates to the general demand for greater autonomy, perhaps over revenue, about policy, about parliamentary representation.
Well, the thing is, anything that is related to a legal agreement, right, becomes very complicated, especially if you define it broadly. So as I mentioned, the middle amendment, Article 160, because it refers to the formation of the Federation based on the Malaysia Agreement, this leaves a lot of room for lawyers in the future to sort of take action based on the Malaysia Agreement. It is just widely defined that the Federation of Malaysia from 63 onwards is based on the agreement called the Malaysia Agreement. So I think there are potential for legal issues in the future. So that's the reason why I think several cabinet members are a bit worried about it. I also think that part of the reasons why there's also a lot of worry about this is that you have to remember this Malaysia Agreement thing, right? Although it's a big issue in Sabah and Sarawak, is really a non-issue among the Malayan political establishment. They don't see this as a big deal. A lot of them, I suspect, are quite happy that, we're just going to amend Article 1, put Sabah and Sarawak on a separate line, and you guys shouldn't be asking for anything after that. So I think there's an element of that as well. And that is, the Malayan political establishment that think that, once we give in to Article 1, don't ask for any more.
Okay, but surely it is important to the voters in Sabah and Sarawak, and I'm just wondering what this postponement could mean for GPS as it gears up for the upcoming elections. Is this a blow to GPS?
So I think if this amendment doesn't go through, I think it will reflect badly on GPS. GPS has staked their reputation in some ways on these amendments going through. You have to remember this amendment, the one I'm talking about, Article 160, right? This was something that they asked for in 2019. And even then, the Attorney General at that time also raised issues with the wording of GPS. So this time we're seeing exactly the same thing. So it comes back really to this issue of whether the Malayan political establishment is really willing to recognize the Malaysia Agreement as the basis for the formation of the federation. You see, you have to remember that a lot of people actually are quite conservative on this issue on the Malayan side. There is a thought, in fact, I would say the majority of people think that Sabah and Sarawak shouldn't complain too much. You already have a certain autonomy, for example, immigration and other stuff. And also, there's also the thinking that once you join the federation, right, you're part of the club. You shouldn't try to separate yourself and make yourself, put yourself in a special position in regards to the rest.
But James, never before have Sabah and Sarawak played such a pivotal role in the formation of federal government. So if they have that leverage, what do you think will happen now? I mean, will they use that leverage to push their case, or are we going to see some sort of evasive response which will just kick this can down the road again?
Well, my take is that the compromise solution is really just to change Article 1, subsection 2. So symbolically, Sabah and Sarawak will be put on a separate line. The other one, the highly controversial one, I suspect it will not go through. The third one about Sarawak Constitution defining who's a native, again, that one is really not controversial. I think that one will go through as well. But the problem is that GPS has staked this whole thing based. They want to put it as a one package consisting of these three amendments. So I think, yes, it probably will go through, but it will take some time. The thing that worries me is that if these things become very heated, they might not proceed with all three at all. And my take is that if they don't get it done this time, you have to wait for a new government to do it. Because I doubt very much, if the thing becomes very messy, they'll come back to it again. So this thing, as you mentioned, will probably be kicked down to the next government if it doesn't happen. And I think that will be extremely bad for the federation. The other thing that worries me is that this whole hoo-ha about all these things in terms of concerns, it could also be in some way a threat for the politicians in Sabah and Sarawak, that the Malayan political establishment is using it as an excuse to test the mental of the politicians in Sabah and Sarawak. As many of the viewers know, many of them are actually quite fickle. Part of the problem with Sabah and Sarawak is that the politicians themselves, although in public they say they support MA63, when it comes to the crunch, there are lots of division even within the politicians in Sabah and Sarawak. So, this thing, it can go either way.
James, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. We appreciate your time. Political analyst, Professor James Chin there. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this, but we'll be back with more on this topic. So stay tuned.